Do we have a second?
Deborah Levin seconds.
Thanks, Deb. All right, I'll go through the roll call, Jeff, if that works for you.
Let's do it.
All right, Bill Herman, Auburn.
Present and abstain.
Okay, thank you. Paula from Auburn.
Present and abstain.
And I should just say the whole name, Paula Martzloff.
That's okay.
The Z got me nervous, Paula. I don't know why. Bedford, Bill DeShaco,
Present and yes.
and Charlie Fairman,
Present and abstain.
Barbara Salvatore,
And abstain.
Al Hall Candia,
Approve, yes.
Dick Snow,
I didn't make the meeting, but I did review the whole thing, so I will vote yes, and I am present.
okay, great. Deb Munson,
Here and yes.
Bob Cody,
Present and abstain.
Jeff Moulton,
Present and approve.
John O'Connor,
Present, yes.
Alfred Eisenberg. Alfred, you got to unmute. For whatever reason, Alfred, I see you're unmuted. We can't hear you. So if you put on your picture, we could at least get a thumbs up for you. Anybody see Alfred? Where the heck is he?
He just left.
Oh, okay, having problems. Linda Kuhnhart.
Yeah, so the same thing happened to me. I got on, sorry, present and approved, but as far as Alfred, when I clicked on, I was allowed to join the group and then I got kicked off. So he's probably having worse problems than me since his broadband is less active than mine.
Huh, okay. Just for the record, I did not kick you off. Brian Battaglia,
Present and yes.
Suzanne Brunel,
Present and I approve.
Deb Levins,
Present and yes.
Art Rugg,
Present and yes.
Martin Sruit. I swear I'm gonna say it. Srugas,
Present and abstain.
Mark Sunan.
Present and yes.
Oh, sorry, and I know I missed Peter Capano in Manchester.
Yes, I'm here and I approve the minutes.
Great. Tom Clow
Here, yes.
and Wyndham Peter Griffin,
Present and abstain.
Mike Witten,
I'm here. I vote yes.
and we have a phone number. Anyone else I missed?
Dave Pierce, I'm at the commission. Yes.
Thanks, Dave.
He's behind Linda's head.
Yes.
All right, good. And so glad to hear you. And for all those attending, we did get a new microphone system in the office, which is why you just now heard Al Hall probably for the first time in months. All right.
We have a couple of phone numbers that I'm not sure if we captured in the roll call.
All right, so let's check that. Thanks, Linda. Ending in 4803, who would that be? And you have to unmute yourself.
Staying down? Yes. Okay. Thank you. Perfect. We are all done then. Okay, great. All right. Have a good day. Thank you. Got all the lights? Yes.
All right, Bill DeShaco, I think I hear you. If you could mute yourself real quick. So ending in 2900.
That's me, Alfred Eisenberg from Francistown. I had some problems with with my internet right now, so I'm in and out on the video.
All right, we've got you, Alfred. Okay, and then how did you want to vote on the minutes? Oh my goodness, on the minutes. Are you already gone? I think he already left. I just renamed him and he's gone. All right, 4803. Here now an echo. All right, anyone who's not speaking, could you please mute? Or I can just mute everyone. I'm going to mute all. All right, now you just have to unmute yourselves as you speak, and I'm sorry about that, but the echo drives me a little nutty. So I see Alfred. Oh my God. And yeah, I'm going to mute that. Alfred, give a thumbs up about the minutes, or level hand for abstain, or down thumb for no.
Yeah, I'm abstained from last month as I wasn't here. But,
Okay. Great. I'm muting you. All right. And that's only because of the feedback we're getting, and yeah, it's not good today. All right. One more try on the phone number ending in 4803. Could you identify yourself, please? You have to unmute yourself. And that's *6. All right, I think we're having trouble there, a little technical difficulty, so I'm sorry, we'll have to skip you, but thanks for being on, and certainly welcome to listen. All right, I think that's the roll call. And Jeff, you'll just have to unmute yourself to go to the next thing.
Very good. So do we have any old business, Sylvia, before we move on to the congestion management process?
No old business, let's move on.
All right, Carl, you're up.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Can everybody hear me okay?
We're good.
I'm trying to share screens and you've got to enable me, Sylvia.
Yep. Okay, you should be able to go now.
Okay. Let's see. Share screen. Sorry about this, everybody. Let's see. There it is. Okay, it's coming up, everybody. It's just going to take a second, I think.
All right.
There we go. Can everybody see the slideshow okay? It starts off the top with SNHPC congestion management process, Federal Highway Administration comments and consideration of approval. I'm going to take that as a yes. Just a reminder that at our last meeting, we gave you an overview of the congestion management process plan. And you may recall also that we had a federal highway review in, I think it was late November. And around that same time, they provided comments to us. And we have received these comments. They're great. They've only improved the congestion management process document. And I've got 14 slides here just to go over what these comments were and how we're proposing to react to them, which is to mostly incorporate the comments. Some of them were just comments and, observations. And I know a lot of you have already seen this presentation at TAC, so I'll go through it fairly quickly, but anybody just ask a question in process if you've got one, and we'll address it there. Thank you. All right, just a reminder that, and I've got a weird thing on my screen. Okay, there it is. Now I can see everything. The CMP network covers the entire region, and we developed this network based on a corridor approach. There are 9 different corridors listed here on the right, and it was identified through coordination with looking at the results of our travel demand model and where there's congestion, and input from the Technical Advisory Committee quite a while ago now. The product in this CMP are a series of maps like this one on the left. From the 2010 congestion management process, we've now expanded the analysis to the entire region. Again, those 9 routes from edge of town to edge of town throughout the region. It includes these corridor-specific congestion visualizations. And by visualization, we mean these maps. And what they represent is bidirectional movement, travel throughout the region by corridor. So, this one, just examples from top left is in Allenstown, Route 3 goes south, all the way down into Manchester. You can see the red. Red means more congested, green means more free flow, and different gradients. And you can see on the third panel, There's dark green on the right and light green on the left, which means mild congestion southbound, and on the right, the green means no congestion in this condition. Just a reminder of what these maps convey and what they look like. It uses probe data, meaning cell phones, aggregates them throughout the region and gives us an idea of speeds in both the AM morning commute period, weekday peak, and the PM peak. And we partnered with our other MPOs and our PCs throughout the state to do a broad purchase of this data. And the process plan ultimately identifies corridor-specific congestion management strategies, for each segment, even by direction, throughout the entire region. So immediately we just go right to the comments. They looked at the entire document and have provided about 14 comments. In some instances, we've combined them because the response makes sense to combine to respond to. 1 and 2 were just an overall comment that that we're doing a good job of using the CMP guidebook, which is a guidebook that the Federal Highway put out, 8 different steps that are outlined in there. They appreciated our use of the travel time performance data and the mapping visualizations I just showed you for congestion. And they provided examples to us of what other MPOs of a similar size are doing, what their resources are. And there's really no need for a response. We've acknowledged this and reviewed the detailed comments, which they said, here, after this, they said, there's more comments to come. Those are where we need to respond. So summary of comment 3, they suggested enhancing the introduction with a narrative of how we approach the CMP update, people involved, what changed, and the role of public involvement. And our recommended response here is to add a narrative explaining the corridors and network were done in conjunction with the TAC members, as I already mentioned, and reviewed by the MPO, and partner agency staff were represented, DES, DOT, et cetera. Also adding a narrative that the updated document was prepared primarily by staff and included public comment period and hearing, which is still open right now, which we'll get to at the end here. Comment 4 recommended providing narrative around the regional objectives in the SNHPC region that provides clarity and consistency of the appropriate goals and objectives between the Metropolitan Transportation Plan and those in the CMP. And our recommended response is we've added narrative describing the MTP goals and objectives and how they connect to required and relevant performance measures. And we just updated those goals and objectives as part of the MTP process that's ongoing. So we actually brought the MTP goals and objectives, the new ones, the revised ones, into the CMP as part of this, adding this based on this comment. Comment 5, in the definition of the SNHPC regional network section, Federal Highway recommended providing enhanced narrative on how some routes are only partially designated as NHS, National Highway System, and discussed the lengths and termini and how routes were selected. And this is, our response is really, this is nuanced and this is inside baseball with the network here, but we add a narrative that explains the network with a table, SNHPC CMP National Highway System designation limits. And this table includes columns on roadway length and designation, whether or not it's partially or completely in the NHS, and termini nodes, meaning, it goes from this road, if it's not the entire route, it goes from, this street to this intersection, and with a length that helps to designate and give you an idea of what the limits are. So we added that table narrative. 6 and 7, we combine these because they're both about this dashboard approach, which I'll explain in a second. The definition of performance measures section, we recommended explaining the 3 performance measures that we have: travel time index, TTI, level of truck time reliability, LOTTR, and truck travel time reliability. I know these are a tongue twister. TR, and how we use them to measure and monitor congestion. And what we said at our meeting with Federal Highway, and what we've done here is we've provided, quote, a dashboard. It's not as extensive as we had previously thought. This dashboard approach provides quarter level snapshot of TTI, as well as some LOTTR and TTR figures. However, the LOTTR and TTTR data is really not adequate to provide a comprehensive dashboard for the whole region. But that's something we, when that data becomes more available, we plan to add it to these reports. Comment 7, in the data and monitoring of system performance section, it was recommended that an update on data collection activities be provided, explaining the relationship between these activities and the CMP and overall MPO planning process. And our recommended response here is to add narrative of SNHPC's current data collection programs You'll be familiar with many of these. The travel demand model itself and the data that goes into that, our traffic counting program that we do for the region and for DOT, vehicle classification counts, bicycle and pedestrian counts, as well as the popular programs related to high crash locations, traffic signal warrant studies and analysis, and RSAs are known as roadway safety audits. All this type of data that we collect can be used to make assessments on congestion and strategies. So we propose to add this, and we have in the current document draft. Comment 8, in the data and monitoring of system performance section, we were asked about adjustments to TTI thresholds. The SNHPC's TTI thresholds do not vary between road types. However, we did adjust the free flow speed based on road classification. This is a very technical comment and request. Basically, we don't need to make any further edits to this. We're constrained with the data availability and the nuances between what congestion is in the region. But in the future, we will consider incorporating different TTI thresholds for different roadway types and include in the report a communication on the differences in delay on roadway types. Basically, this means that delay on an interstate is not the same as delay on a local road, and therefore the thresholds could be set differently and evaluated differently. Again, something that we don't need to address now, but in the future we'll try to address it better. Summary of comment 8, it was suggested that in the analysis of congestion and identification of strategies section, that it could be enhanced by adding how our strategies were identified and recommended for each corridor, additional information about responsibility for implementation of the strategies, the estimated costs, funding sources, and implementation schedule should be included. And a recommended response is to add a narrative and a table with this information. Summary of comment 10, again suggested that in the analysis of congestion and identification of strategies section, that it could be enhanced by describing some strategies that SNHPC anticipates applying regionally. And so we have added narrative. Our recommended response is to add narrative that explains regional strategies in the right in the document. And these you'll know, again, transportation demand management or TDM strategies, active transportation, bicycle and pedestrian strategies, and land use and transportation strategies. All things we do and have done for years. They just asked for some narrative about those activities, and so we added a few paragraphs on each of them. Summary of comment 12, it was suggested that in the programming and implementation strategies section, that it could be enhanced by describing the relationship between the CMP document and our other documents that are required, the 10-year plan, TYP, and the MPP, Metropolitan Transportation Plan, and the project prioritization, selection, and programming via a graphic similar to the one presented at the review. And a recommended response, and I'll show it to you in a second, is to add an enhanced graphic showing the relationship between these planning processes. And this is what we've added. We actually showed this to them at the review, and they liked it, and so they said, oh, you should add it in. And I think there were some components in there, but at the bottom you'll see here in the lower left, it shows congestion management process in that kind of brownish box, and how that relates to the TDM, the travel demand model, and how that data and analysis feeds into our Metropolitan Transportation Plan and up through the 10-year plan document and ultimately to our TIP. So basically how problems that are identified work their way through the process and turn into a project that we build. Added this graphic now into the CMP. Two more here, summary of comment 13. It was suggested by them that the programming and implementation strategies section could be enhanced by confirming the update schedule of the CMP. This document is required to be updated regularly, and they wanted us to describe additional activities and resources we will use to communicate the resulting issues and strategies. And our recommended response is to add a narrative and with the anticipated 5-year update schedule, which is what's required. We'll be doing tracking of data over the years, of course, but the next CMP document, such as the one we're adopting, is required to be adopted in 2025. And what we plan to do is include references to the outreach, equity, and technology means that we recently adopted in our SNHPC public participation plan. Just makes sense to refer to that because that's a comprehensive document about our methods, and it comprises a number of pages. Anything more would be a little bit overkill here. So by reference, that's how we will communicate as we do now. Summary of comment 14, it was suggested that programming and implementation strategies section could be enhanced by describing how We will use future CMP updates to evaluate the effectiveness of the CMP strategies and the resulting projects, perhaps by corridor. And the recommended response is to add a narrative explaining that comparative travel time index data and associated mapping for the 9 corridors in the CMP network will be included in future CMPs with noted project improvements. Future CMP updates will incorporate updated data to track and monitor results. Basically, again, taking data, a lot of data, and making it easily understandable. And we'll probably show on these maps, in 2022, there was a project here on I-293, and in 2024, there was a project here on South River Road, Route 3 in Bedford, so on and so forth. And what the improvements were, if any, by the data. All right, so that takes you through the comments. Next steps for adoption of the CMP. With any public comment period, the incorporation of edits to the draft document is done at the discretion of the SNHPC MPO, us, and none of the comments from Federal Highway affect the analysis of congested areas or the strategies identified to mitigate congestion in the region. And so if you, the SNHPC MPO, agrees with the recommended responses by staff and that we've incorporated into the MPO document, the CMP document, there are 2 options here, which can be done today. Endorse the draft CMP with these recommended edits and delegate authority to staff to incorporate the comments into the final product. Or 2, review a revised draft that incorporates the comments and consider adoption in January. And that's
Carl,
really,
can you go back to the slide on comment number 8, please?
of course. Oh, what did I do here? That's the one, Dick, I think, right?
Lower right-hand side, delay on an interstate is not equivalent to delay a local road. Where is it? No.
Yeah. Oh. Delay on a local road.
Delay on a local road.
Yeah. Sorry about that. That's confusing without the on. Can anybody hear him?
My grandfather was a editor.
I couldn't hear you, Dick, there, but I'm sure it was a comment about improving our editing.
On the recommended response, second to the last sentence, delay on an interstate is not equivalent to delay on a local road.
Yes.
That's it.
That was easy. Make that edit. This is for the PowerPoint, but we got to correct in the actual document.
Clerical.
Mr. Chairman, would you like a motion?
Make the motion, I'll second it.
Yeah, this is Peter Capano. I move that we approve the responses and allow the staff to incorporate them into the final document.
Al Hall, I second that motion.
Okay. Carl, if you could stop sharing, we'll get everyone back. Although yeah, good. And let's see, did we lose Jeff or no?
No,
He's right.
you got me on mute, and so I was talking to myself.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you just have to unmute yourself. So we have a first by Peter and a second by Al Hall. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Let me go through everything here. All right. Bill Herman, Auburn.
Yes.
Paula Martzloff.
Yes.
Bill DeShaco in Bedford.
Yes.
Charlie Fairman in Bedford.
Yeah, excuse me, yes.
Barbara Salvatore, Bedford.
Yes.
Al Hall.
Yes.
Dick Snow. Dick, I think you might be muted. Where is Dick? Dick, you're muted. We're doing the motion.
Dick, you can always give a thumbs up if your audio is not working.
All right, something's happening over there technically wise with our friend Dick Snow, so we'll move on. Deb Munson. I don't hear Deb either.
Yes.
Thank you. There you go. Bob Cody.
Yes.
Thank you, Bob. Jeff Moulton.
Yes.
John O'Connor.
Yes.
Alfred. Is Alfred still here?
Yes.
Oh, good. Linda Kuhnhart.
Favor.
Thanks. David Pierce.
Yes.
Brian Battaglia.
Yes.
Suzanne
Yes.
in Londonderry. Deb in
Yes.
Londonderry.
Yes.
Art Rugg.
Yes.
Martin in Londonderry.
Yes.
Thanks, Martin. Peter in Manchester.
Yes.
Mark in New Boston.
While I think the changes are, while I think the staff is imminently responsive and responsible, I think the changes are more substantial than a simple let the staff figure it out. So I vote nay.
Thank you. That was consistent with Mark's vote at the TAC meeting. Tom in Ware.
Yes.
Peter in Wyndham.
Yes.
Mike Witten, MTA.
Yes.
And we'll try Dick Snow again. Dick, you want to just give a thumbs up or?
Aye.
There you
Dick
go.
Snow from Candia, I'm voting aye. And thank you, Mark, for your input.
You made it. Good. All right. That's the vote. We're ready for the next item.
Very good. So we're going to move on to the Metropolitan Transportation Plan by James Bayo.
All right, James, I just had to find you on my screen.
This is actually not James. I'm not sure how James got on his name got on the agenda, but this will actually be me. Unfortunately, you're going to be listening to me for the final time in 2020.
If we have to.
Yeah, I'll try to make it as painless as possible. But all right, let's see.
What?
Can everybody see a slideshow here?
Yes.
Okay, good. In full screen form?
No.
Yes.
I heard a no and a yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
You're
right.
all set, Nate, and please mute yourself if you're not speaking. Thank you.
Okay, so last month we had a very good presentation from James and Carl, kind of laying the groundwork for our metropolitan transportation plan, what we call our long range plan or our metropolitan transportation plan. This is our core planning document for transportation that looks out more than 20 years. So our horizon year is 2045 on this metropolitan transportation plan. So we're looking out more than 20 years with this plan, almost 25 years, in fact. So this presentation is going to kind of build off of what James and Carl presented last month. So I'm gonna start by talking about our regional travel demand model. I'm going to highlight the projects that you will see in the draft metropolitan transportation plan, as well as the fiscal constraint for those projects. So we started with working on an update of our travel demand model. We maintain a regional travel demand model that supports our transportation planning process. That model had been at a 2010 base year and a 2040 horizon year. So we have updated that. We used to have an in-house model expert who I'm sure many of you remember, named Julie Chen. And Julie was the model was her purview. Unfortunately, we lost Julie a couple of years ago. She lives in sunny Broward County, Florida now. where it's probably much warmer and less snowy than it is here in New Hampshire. So we didn't have her in-house expertise anymore, and we began utilizing the assistance of our on-call engineering firm, VHB. VHB has some in-house modeling experts, and Julie Murphy from VHB has worked closely with our staff on and kind of provided us with technical assistance in updating our model. So the model now is at a 2015 base year and a 2045 horizon year. So the biggest and most significant update to the regional travel model for this plan was that we added 4 communities that are not actually part of the SNHPC region. Those are Allenstown, Bow, Dunbarton, and Pembroke. And that doesn't mean that we are, expanding the region or anything like that. As a result of the last census, part of the Manchester urbanized area kind of crept north into those communities. And so we have a federal obligation to cover the entire Manchester urbanized area in our planning process, and that includes our model. So we needed to include those communities in our model update. We also worked with VHB and to update our demographic data projections. That includes population, households, employment, and school enrollment projections out to 2045 at the traffic analysis zone level. So we have a couple of hundred traffic analysis zones in our region. Those are kind of the components of the model. And we do very granular projections for each of those zones. What does that yield? That yields this. We look at a base year and a horizon year model result. This is the base year. This is 2015, and those areas in red and pink that you see on this map are areas that our model is showing have some capacity issues. And I don't think there are a whole lot of surprises here. It probably, what you see on this map, probably reflects what you normally experience around the region. We are showing I-93 widening is not complete yet in 2015. It's still not quite complete yet here in 2020, but it certainly wasn't complete yet during the 2015 base year. So you see the main line of I-93 basically from the Wyndham town line all the way to Manchester as having some congestion issues, as well as those exits in between. I-293 from Route 101 north is an area of concern. Route 101 from the I-293 interchange into the town of Bedford. Route 3, particularly in the town of Hooksett, and Route 28 in Londonderry and Derry are all areas that are underscored in our models having capacity issues. So the heart of our metropolitan transportation plan are the projects that we identify as being needed on the regional transportation network for that next 20 plus years. So we use our base model as one of the sources for identifying what those projects are. But we need to make sure that our program of projects is fiscally constrained against the expected transportation revenues that we anticipate will be available in the region. So we have an entire chapter in the draft long range plan. I'll hit some of the highlights a little bit later on that talks about the amount of Federal Highway Administration revenue that comes into New Hampshire, what the regional share of that is likely to be over the next 20 years, inflation rates and growth rates and all of that sort of stuff. We go into great detail on. I'll spare you many of those details in this presentation, but certainly when we release the draft plan tomorrow, take a look at chapter 6 and you can go into a lot of detail about year by year between now and 2045, what revenues we expect to come into the region to support both infrastructure and transit, and what expenses we anticipate on the project side. We include all surface transportation modes in our long-range plan. So that includes roads and bridges, freight, transit, bicycle, and pedestrian. Transit also potentially including passenger rail transit would be a form of surface transportation. What is not in our long-range plan is air transportation projects. So projects affecting the airport, those airport improvement program projects and different air transportation projects, those are covered under a completely separate planning process overseen by the FAA and the airport. And so we only cover surface transportation modes in our plan, at least at the project level. You will see discussion of the airport and recent air travel trends in the plan, but not the identification of air travel related projects. How did we source the projects that are in the draft metropolitan plan? For the first 10 years, that being fiscal year 2021 to fiscal year 2030, our plan exactly mirrors the current adopted state of New Hampshire 10-year transportation improvement plan. So that for the first 10 years, we have that kind of we don't deviate at all from the adopted 10-year transportation plan. Starting in fiscal year 2031 out to the horizon year of 2045, we call those the out years of the metropolitan plan. That's the long range kind of project needs component that we use to end up feeding what we end up putting into the 10-year transportation plan. Where do we source those projects from? Well, in a number of different places. Our base year travel demand model that I just showed you and the results of that model. Regionally identified projects that come out of our planning efforts at the regional level. That includes the CMP and the projects that were identified in the CMP that Carl talked about a few minutes ago, as well as our ITS architecture, ITS being intelligent transportation systems. We look at local master plan project priorities because each of the master plans at the local level in the region often identify different project needs that the community would like to see happen. Whether those be intersection improvements or bicycle pedestrian facilities, whatever the case may be, local master plans are a good statement of where communities see their needs at. We source that to help build our metropolitan plan. Local and regional corridor studies that have been conducted. We look also at previous but unfunded TAP, that being transportation alternatives, CMAQ, that being congestion mitigation and air quality, BUILD, that being the better utilizing investments to leverage development program, as well as previous 10-year plan applications. So in many cases, there are unfunded applications that have been submitted in the past that couldn't be funded due to limitations in different programs. Those are still important in communities, and we want to make sure that those are represented in our metropolitan plan. And we have done that in this plan. We look at statewide plans. For instance, the statewide strategic transit assessment that was recently conducted outlined some transit improvement projects that our region can benefit from. We also look at other plans and studies, what we call special plans and studies. We've had presentations from James Vail in our office in the past on his recent work assisting the city of Manchester with a transit-oriented development plan, as well as road safety audits that we conduct. We source all of those different special plans and studies. Overall, there are more than 125 projects in the draft Metropolitan Transportation Plan. The next few slides are going to look really dense and really scary because I'm going to show what those projects are. I'm not going to walk through those projects line by line. We'd be here for a long time, and I know 2020 is close to an end, and nobody wants to hear me talk more than I absolutely need to. So rather than spending 17 hours going line by line through projects, I'm going to hit some of the highlights of those 125 projects. When the draft plan is released tomorrow, feel free to download it and look line by line through the different projects that are detailed in the plan and let us know if you have any questions. But I'm only going to hit the highlights here for the next few minutes on what will be very dense and very scary looking slides. So here we go. These projects are all in, the first couple of slides here are showing the projects that are already in the 10-year transportation improvement plan. So I think most of you are probably familiar with many or if not all of these projects. In Bedford, for instance, the Route 3 widening from Hawthorne Drive to the airport access road, that was a major focus of ours 2 years ago. It continues to be a focus of ours in this next 10-year plan update. We added, if you recall, 2 cycles ago, A corridor study of Route 114 from 101 in Bedford to Henry Bridge Road in Goffstown. That corridor study will be, we anticipate that DOT is going to begin that study in the next few months. In Candia, if you recall, 2 update cycles ago, we added a project at what's called the Four Corners area locally in Candia, that being the intersection of Route 27, 43, and Raymond Road. In obviously Derry and Londonderry, the Exit 4A project continues to be a primary focus of those 2 communities, as well as the New Hampshire DOT, which continues to try to reassess the project and figure out how to get it to the finish line as efficiently and expeditiously as possible. In the town of Hooksett, just starting right now the engineering phase work. In fact, I have been asked to serve on the committee for this project. The DOT committee for this project, just starting the engineering work on the widening of Route 3 from Route 27 to Alice Avenue in the town of Hooksett. That's going to be a very significant project. In Londonderry, we programmed the safety and operational improvement project at Route 28 and 128 2 cycles ago. That will again be a focus of ours in this update, as it may need some supplemental funding. In Londonderry and in Manchester, you see the neighboring sections of the north-south rail trail. So the Londonderry rail trail, the final section north to the city of Manchester line, as well as in Manchester, the corresponding project from the end of the South Manchester rail trail to the Londonderry town line. Both of those projects are transportation alternatives projects that got funded together in the last update round. So that will see the filling of that gap both in Londonderry and Manchester to create that connection that we've long waited for on that trail network. If you recall, 2 cycles ago in the 10-year plan, we programmed a project to make improvements to the I-293 exit 1 interchange at South Willow Street, that being a technology project that will look at adaptive signal control and kind of how to better utilize and fully utilize the existing capacity of that interchange through technology. On that technology front, adaptive signal control on Granite Street, and that is a CMAQ project that was funded a couple of years ago that the city of Manchester is working diligently on and is advancing towards construction. As well as the CMAQ project to make improvements in Manchester at South Willow Street and Weston Road. You may remember that from last year. That was a focus of ours, as well as the other project that came in that CMAQ round, the roundabout at River Road and Bicentennial Road near the Dairyfield School entrance. Those are all here in the 10-year plan and reflected in our long-range plan. In Wyndham, if you recall, 2 years ago, we added supplemental funding to the intersection improvement project at Route 28 and Ralston Road. There's going to be a significant project to revamp the Bedford Mainline Toll Plaza as an all-electronic tolling facility. So there, the existing toll booth and toll takers and cash collection, all of that stuff will be disappearing in the next few years as that plaza is converted to all electronic tolling. We also know, obviously, that the Exit 6 and 7 project in Manchester on I-293, very, very significant, one of the largest projects in the region behind the I-93 widening. Exit 6 is currently somewhere around $95 million on the construction side to convert the Exit 6 circle into a single point interchange. And in Exit 7, relocating the existing Exit 7 north into a full access interchange. And that's about $50 million for Exit 7. So between those 2 projects, close to $150 million in total investment in just that section of the city of Manchester on the Turnpike. Not to be forgotten is another very large project, one of the largest in the state that comes into our region, and that is the widening of the Effie Everett Turnpike from Nashua to Bedford. So from Exit 8 in Nashua to the 293 interchange in Bedford, all of the 2-lane sections of the Effie Everett Turnpike are going to be widened to 3-lane sections. So we obviously, because that comes into our region, we carry that project in both the 10-year plan and the Metropolitan Transportation Plan in our region. None of those, I think, are surprises to anybody here. Those of you who have been on the commission for a while recognize and probably, have some familiarity with these projects. Now I'm going to shift gears and move and look out into the out years of the Metropolitan Plan, that being fiscal year 31 to fiscal year 2045. So these are the final out years beyond the existing 10-year plan. Some of the highlights here, Auburn. I know Auburn has previously put grant applications in to do a multi-use path along Route 121 from Eaton Hill Road to Shore Drive. We have not forgotten about that project and hope to see it funded and have included it in the Metropolitan Plan. We know that supplemental funding is going to be needed for the Route 3 widening project. That'll be one of the things that we're considering in this 10-year plan update. So that supplemental funding is in the Metropolitan Plan. One of the things that we hear a lot about at public hearings and GASIT hearings that we don't often talk about here at the commission are noise barrier projects. The sound wall projects, type 2 sound barriers. The DOT has done a detailed study of all of the locations in the state where type 2 noise barriers are justified, or at least believed to be justified. We have included all of the type 2 noise barrier projects identified and known to be potentially feasible in the region in our Metropolitan Plan. In response to all of the comments that we hear throughout the region about the importance of noise barriers. So in Bedford, for instance, here's a noise barrier on Route 101 eastbound between these two particular mileposts. So you'll see noise barrier projects throughout the region in our Metropolitan Plan. Also in Bedford, one of the long-standing desires of we just completed the widening of Route 101 to Wallace Road from 114. The town of Bedford has previously been identified in a corridor study of Route 101. That widening is anticipated to continue to the Amherst town line in the future. So we've programmed that project. This project has been in the last, I think, 3 metropolitan plans for the region. So it's something that has been out there for a while. But certainly is important to the town. We have a number of projects, I'm not going to highlight them all, that are looking at signalized corridors, and this builds on the congestion management process, but implementing new technology through adaptive signal control and signal performance measures on these heavily signalized corridors. So one of those is on South River Road and River Road on Route 3 in Bedford. So you'll see a number of these adaptive signal control projects on heavily signalized corridors, and this one in Bedford is a good example. In Candia, we talked about the Four Corners project. That will be a transportation reconstruction of that area. But at the same time, the town of Candia has been thinking and working on planning for that area to be what they call the Four Corners Village. And one of the things that seems to have wide support in the community is the idea in the future of making that area more walkable through sidewalks. And also there are some drainage issues that in that area that may require a closed drainage system. So we've got that project programmed in the long range plan for the town of Candia. In Chester, Chester's not a community that has significant congestion issues per se. It's not, it's not the same as we deal with in Derry or in Manchester or Londonderry, but they do have some very tricky locations and intersections that are of local importance to the community. So we've identified a number of those intersections, intersection improvement projects in our metropolitan plan. One of those, for instance, is at Route 102 and North Pond Road in the town of Chester. In Deerfield, we know that their top priority at the moment is the roundabout conversion at the intersection of Route 107, Church Street and Candia Road. They've proposed that for consideration in the next 10-year plan update. We're evaluating that right now. But in the interim, before it makes it into the 10-year plan, we want to make sure that it's reflected in our metropolitan plan, our long-range plan. In the town of Derry, the same thing. One of the town of Derry's top priority at the moment, and this is what they put in for 10-year plan consideration in this update cycle, which we're working on at the moment, is looking at the extension of the Dairy Rail Trail from Madden Road to the Londonderry town line. That would see the completion of that trail within the town of Derry and form that, begin to form that connection into Londonderry and ultimately into Manchester and beyond. In Francistown, in the village center, if you're familiar with the area of in the Route 136, Route 47 area, kind of in the village center of Francistown, there's been a longstanding desire to make that area more walkable and to have pedestrian improvements across those roadways to some of the core sites in the village center. They actually had a UNH engineering student do their capstone project on designing some options for how to make those pedestrian improvements. It's a tricky location. The improvements, are not that are needed to facilitate that aren't necessarily low cost per se. So we want to make sure that that's reflected in our metropolitan plan. And so we've programmed a project in the out years in Francistown to make those traffic calming and pedestrian improvements in the village center. In Goffstown, we know that corridor study that I mentioned a few minutes ago is likely to identify some capacity issues in the future on 114 between the Bedford Town Line and Henry Bridge Road, some intersection capacity issues at a minimum. And we want to make sure that we have some implementation funding in there for a project that may come out of that corridor study. So that we've programmed that. We're kind of looking at the corridor studies that are anticipated to be completed in the next few years, what those may yield in terms of recommendations, and trying to get ahead of that by anticipating what the projects may be needed in those out years of the plan. So that's one example in Goffstown. If Bruce Thomas was here from the town of Hooksett, the town engineer in Hooksett, he would tell you that one of the top priorities in the town of Hooksett is an engineering study of Route 3A from Hackett Hill Road to Main Street. They're really focused on trying to identify some improvement options within that section of Route 3A. So we've programmed that project here. I talked a few minutes ago about the one widening project on Route 3 in Hooksett. There's another bottleneck area in the town of Hooksett between Legends Drive and Hunt Street. This was in our last long-range plan, and we've carried it forward into this long-range plan. It's also in our congestion management process to address this bottleneck area of Route 3 by widening between that section. And here in Hooksett is another one of those adaptive signal control projects that we talked about a few minutes ago. In this case, it's on Route 3, the Hooksett Road section of Route 3, the heavily signalized section of Route 3 within the town of Hooksett. That implementing that type of technology could potentially have some benefits to that corridor. So we're looking at that closely on the Hooksett Road section of Route 3. In Londonderry, we know that supplemental funding is likely to be needed for that project at the intersection of Route 28 and 128. So we've reflected that in the long-range plan. We also know that Londonderry has expressed a long-standing need for capacity improvements on Route 28 between Vista Ridge Drive and Route 128. So that's a project, that's a bigger scale project, but we've included it in the long-range plan. In Manchester, we know that the top priority for the city in this upcoming 10-year plan update is an engineering study of 2nd Street and the I-293 corridor from exit 5 to Route 101. Not surprisingly, this is one of those areas in our 2015 base year model that is showing as having capacity issues. So this is a bottleneck area as well. Improvements also recently submitted for consideration in Manchester in this 10-year plan update are the improvements that we recently talked about at Hooksett Road and Campbell Street, as well as Campbell Drive and Campbell Street, and the operational and capacity improvements that we discussed a couple of meetings ago at the Wellington Road intersections at I-93 exit 8. That being the northbound and southbound ramps of Wellington Road, as well as the Bridge Street and Mammoth Road intersection nearby. We also have identified 2 larger scale projects in Manchester at the bottom of this list. We talked a few minutes ago about the exit 6 and 7 project being a major investment in the turnpike in Manchester. Once that major investment is completed and finished, the next wave of major investment needs on the Turnpike in Manchester is going to be in the exit 4 area and that main line between exit 5 and the 101 interchange. So we have programmed here in the long range plan the complete reconstruction of the exit 4 interchange in Manchester on 293, as well as expanding the I-293 main line to 3 lanes in each direction from exit 5 to the 101 interchange. That is a bottleneck area. And I think everybody in the region who drives it becomes aware of that pretty quickly. There are a couple of other projects in Manchester that were highlighted in a recent BUILD grant application. Actually, they've applied for BUILD, which is a federal discretionary program for the last 2 years. There are some interesting projects that were proposed in that BUILD grant that we carried forward into this metropolitan plan. The first is, if you're familiar with the intersection of Queen City Avenue, Silly Road, and South Willow Street, that's kind of a highway style interchange, that intersection. And the preferred alternative there is to actually convert that interchange into what's called a dual roundabout system, or a dog bone roundabout, or a peanut about, some people call it. So we've carried that forward into the metropolitan plan, as well as 2 other elements of the BUILD grant, which is converting the former Manchester Lawrence Railroad corridor into a 2-lane vehicular roadway with a separated multi-use path between South Commercial Street and Queen City Avenue, as well as a pedestrian bridge at the intersection of Granite and Commercial Street. The next 2 items are identified out of the recent transit-oriented development plan that James Bayo in our office has presented on in the past. That being a new north-south roadway from South Commercial Street to Sundial Avenue, as well as the multimodal transportation center in downtown Manchester, which was identifying the location for that was one of the main efforts in that transit-oriented development plan. Lastly, I would note, and this bottom arrow seems to be a little askew, but we have identified, if you've been driving up and down the Effie Everett Turnpike all the way to Concord, you may have noticed that recently the installation of new permanent message signs, new closed circuit cameras, and work going on the side of the road related to those message boards. That's called an Intelligent Transportation System project. And we hope to replicate that on some of the key corridors around the region. And one of those being the limited access section of Route 101 east of I-93. So traveler information via dynamic message signs, closed circuit cameras, and roadway detectors that feed back into the state's traffic management center. That is really, we're trying to emulate the good work that's happened on the Effie Everett Turnpike through other major roadways in the region, and that's one example. In New Boston, we haven't talked a lot about kind of the basic roadway needs of the region, but as we head out into the western part of the region, there are some significant areas where pavement rehabilitation, shoulder and drainage improvements are needed on the infrastructure in the more rural communities in the western part of the region. So in New Boston, we've identified shoulder and drainage improvements on Route 13 from the village center to the Goffstown town line as being one of the important projects. Also, finally creating that connection between the New Boston Rail Trail and the Goffstown Rail Trail. I think about more than a year ago, we had Larry Keniston, who's now retired, but at that time was the bicycle pedestrian coordinator at New Hampshire DOT. And he gave a presentation to us, if you might recall, about how to form that connection and what options may be available to finally make that connection. So that's in our metropolitan plan. Also in Ware, highlighting the pavement rehabilitation needs of the region. There are a number of locations, like I say, in the western part of the region where the pavement conditions are an issue. One of those is on Route 77 between 114 and the Dunbarton town line in the town of Ware. That's an area where pavement condition data is showing some significant issues. And we want to make sure that that gets rehabilitated and reconstructed appropriately. In the town of Wyndham, A few years ago now, maybe 7 or 8 years ago now, there was a substantial corridor study of the Route 111 corridor between Wall Street and Hardwood Road. And you can still find that corridor study on the town website. And it really is looking at some of the capacity issues and mobility issues that part of the town of Wyndham has. That corridor study recommends the conversion of Route 111 to a 4-lane divided road between Wall Street and Hardwood Road, and constructing 2-lane roundabouts at 4 different intersections within that segment. So it's a pretty major project that Wyndham is proposing there, and we have programmed that project because we know it's Wyndham's top priority. So on the transit side of things, I'll just note that we do have a number of transit projects in our long range plan as well. One of those obviously is what's called the project development phase of the Capital Corridor Rail commuter rail project, that being the design, environmental review, and financial plan. This was a project that was adopted by the state legislature 2 years ago and included in the 10-year plan. So we carry this forward as well in the long range plan because it's in the 10-year plan. And that project is should be kicking into high gear very shortly. We have obviously all of the section 5307, which is urban transit funding, the section 5310 funding, which is elderly and disabled funding, and section 5339 funding, which is capital bus and bus facilities funding throughout the region that is utilized by MTA and CART. We're calling it throughout the plan, you'll see MTA/CART. As I think everybody knows, CART and MTA merged last year, and CART is a separately branded program of the MTA right now. So they are one organization. CART just happens to be a separately branded program, but they are under the administrative umbrella of the MTA. Lastly, I would note that one of the things that happened in the last 10-year plan update was that the state transferred a portion, 25% of the overall CMAQ program, that is congestion mitigation and air quality program, to transit, to FTA transit uses. So on the bottom here, we have identified operating, capital, preventative maintenance, and planning activities for the implementation of transit services recommended in our congestion management process and the statewide strategic transit assessment. We envision the source of funding to support that project being the portion of CMAQ funding that is actually transferred to FTA 5307 that would come into our region. And based on a back of the napkin calculation, we estimate that could be about $220,000 per year coming into the region in new 5307 funding through that CMAQ transfer. So we'd like to work to expand the system as identified in the CMP, as well as the statewide strategic transit assessment through that funding, the new funding that will be coming into the region. So all of those projects that we just reviewed, or at least that we just highlighted, but all of the projects that you saw in the previous slides, we do anticipate that revenue will be available for over the next 25 years. So we have looked at all of the anticipated revenues coming into the region between 2021 and 2045 on infrastructure, that being highways, bridges, pedestrian, bicycle projects. We believe that will be about $1.53 billion supporting projects in the region over that 25-year period. And on the transit side, we believe about $204 million over that 25-year period. So our draft metropolitan transportation plan, all of those projects that we just went through, is fully programmed according to those expected revenues. That was not the case in the plan that the commission adopted 4 years ago. We were under-programmed in the out years of the metropolitan plan. This time we are fully programmed all the way out to 2045 with that program of projects that we just walked through. So I know that that's something that our Federal Highway Administration partners look at closely, is how fully programmed is the metropolitan plan. We are fully programmed. In fact, there are some projects that we weren't able to accommodate in this metropolitan plan. So it's it's a nice change to be fully programmed all the way out through the horizon. What does that program of projects get us at the end of the day? We ran it through our model. So if you remember the 2015 base year model, significant improvements throughout the network. Although, we don't have unlimited funding, so we can't fix every single issue on the network. We will still have some areas with congestion, potential congestion issues. You see the improvements on the I-93 corridor. However, you're seeing some pink still showing up on the main line north of exit 4. But overall, between 2015 and 2045, showing significant improvements on corridor wide on I-93. Some areas that continue to be concerns as we look at the build model results out to 2045. I-293 south of Route 101 is going to continue to be a potential area of concern. I-93 exit 4 continues to have, is likely to continue to have some congestion issues, as well as Route 3 and Hooksett. So those are some of the areas that are consistent between the base year and the build model. But overall, some significant improvements around the region from this program of projects. Next steps, our draft plan will be released tomorrow for a 30-day public comment period, which will run through January 22nd. We'll be posting the plan online on the SNHPC website. We also will make hard copies available upon request, although it's not our primary form of distribution. We're encouraging as many people as possible to download the plan from the SNHPC website when it's posted. And then on January 26th, our MPO meeting, we will have a public hearing to review any comments received and hear any final comments that you may have as members of the MPO, and then consider adoption from there. So that's it in a nutshell. I will stop sharing my screen. I probably have gone a little bit over, so I will be happy to take any questions, or otherwise yield the floor to George Sioris, who I think is next on the agenda.
Hi, Nate. It's Peter. Can I ask you a couple of questions?
Sure, Peter.
You mentioned about passenger rail, which is good. But also, too, it's been announced there's an impending sale of Pan Am to CSX. Have you or people in higher state level begun to think about what ramifications it might be if you're able to transfer truck freight to rail freight, and what that might do to capacity, increased capacity for roads? Secondly, were there any discussions beyond what Commissioner Sheehan's comments were about not widening 93? What might happen when it does reach capacity? And third, have there been any calculations done to determine what the cost of widening highways might be? Not just the infrastructure, but the eminent domain issues concerning taking undeveloped land, developed land, and the millions of dollars it might do for the economy.
So a lot to unpack there. Let me see if I can kind of go in order. So on the CSX question, obviously we are aware of the proposed sale of Pan Am assets to CSX. I think it's something that we hope to have a speaker in the new year that can help to fill in some of the details about how that may work. I also know that sale is subject to regulatory review by the, I think it's the Surface Transportation Board that has jurisdiction there. But I know that there's regulatory review that will be involved in that. And so it's not to say that that's a final thing yet, but we would hope to maybe see if Patrick Herlihy, who is the Director of Aeronautics, Rail and Transit, may be one of our guest speakers early in the new year to discuss that and what the state's perspective on that is, and what changes, if any, we may see as a result of that merger. On the capacity expansion question related to I-93, this is our metropolitan plan that we've put forward is, I would say, there's much less emphasis on traditional capacity expansions in this plan than there has been in the previous Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission metropolitan plans. I think There are some of those major projects that are in the pipeline right now, working their way to construction, like the Effie Everett Turnpike. We do not envision any further expansions of I-93, certainly through the horizon of this long-range plan and beyond. We do not anticipate any significant widenings of other than the bottleneck area of I-293 between 101 and exit 5. That's the most significant expansion project in the out years of the plan. But I don't anticipate that there will be a significant appetite to revisit further expansions on I-93 after that project is completed. As it is, portions of the debt service for the I-93 project are going to continue to be paid through 2034. So we are long from being finished paying off the I-93 project. Even though construction may be wrapping up in the next year, the debt service for that project is going to continue for years to come. And the debt service out to 2034 is state-backed debt service through the former SB 367 funding. So I don't see any scenario, at least to the horizon year, looking out to the next 25 years through 2045, where any further expansion or capacity improvement projects in the I-93 corridor would even be discussed. And I suspect that if DOT were here, they would probably say roughly the same thing. We also anticipate that there will be some disruptions on the horizon in terms of the way that people travel. That being automated vehicles, the development and continued deployment of connected and autonomous vehicles throughout not only our region, but the entire country. That's part of the reason why we're emphasizing ITS projects in this plan, is to get us ready for that new reality that is coming of connected and automated vehicles. That is going to change how people travel very significantly. And no longer will the automobile manufacturers be intending to sell you and me 2 cars each to sit in our driveway. They will be building fleet vehicles that are connected and automated and selling subscriptions for a number of rides per month to use that fleet vehicle. So the auto manufacturers are changing their business plans as well as we speak. So it's, we do the best we can to look in the crystal ball out to 2045, but we don't anticipate anything significant on the 93 corridor. Barbara.
Okay, Nate, I think oh, go ahead, Barbara.
To what degree has the impact of the pandemic been taken into consideration in modifying the baseline information? It impacts utilization, it impacts revenue, it impacts just how the public is thinking about where they need to go, why they need to go. And I think that is something that I would like to see addressed in this plan.
Yeah, I think those are all, certainly the pandemic is overarching at this very moment. And we don't have a full comprehensive understanding of the full impacts, both financially and on travel. We have been charting that and tracking it closely. Our travel demand model is at a 2015 base year. So when we update that model to a 2020 base year, that will be a very significant event, because 2020 will be kind of the heart of the pandemic, and how we adjust for the conditions in the 2020 base year, and whether or not we assume there'll be any return to normal pre-pandemic levels of travel on our highway system is an open question. I think many of the prognosticators do believe that there will be a return to close to pre-pandemic levels, but it's, any forward-looking analysis is uncertain. But when we update the travel demand model in the next 10 year, or the next long range plan update to a 2020 base year, that's when the rubber will hit the road on that side. On the financial side, it's an interesting question. We have modeled our fiscal constraint analysis based on exactly what the adopted 10-year plan has spelled out, where the turnpike revenue and state highway fund revenue is going to feel impacts, certainly in the next couple of years from the pandemic, and already has felt impacts. At the same time, we don't have any defensible projections to use about how that will decrease or bounce back over time. So we have simply mirrored our fiscal constraint analysis based on what is currently adopted at the state level, and that's the rainbow chart of the 10-year plan.
Nate, thank you. I think if we have any other questions, for the sake of time, I think we should have them submitted to Nate, and maybe we can follow up that way. But since we're running out of time, we have one more agenda item.
Right. And just to throw in my 2 cents for Barbara's question regarding the pandemic, we recognize this plan goes out to 2045, but we also recognize that, you know, we right now, 2020, 2021, probably into 2022, we don't know how long the pandemic will have impacts to us and to our system, and financially much longer, no doubt. But certainly we have staff that are considering this issue, are putting some narrative into this report. I don't know, James, if you wanted to maybe throw in some 2 cents on this, and then, I mean, really literally 2 cents, and then we go to our last agenda item, or do you want to contact Barbara afterwards?
I would just note that we will just speak to the fact that while the pandemic is going on and innovations are coming, the model is pretty solidly based on projections, and so we'll acknowledge it, but we'll also note that the information in the long range plan is driven by the methodology of forecasting.
Okay, that was a complicated answer. I'm not even sure I understand that. And the sun is smack in my eyes, so I'm kind of hiding in this corner of my dining room. All right, Jeff,
Do we have a motion to adjourn the MPO?
Right.
So moved. Peter.
This is Mike. I'll second.
All right, we have, Linda, did you get that? We had Peter Griffin and then Mike Whitten. And we can just do a thumbs up all the way around.
Yes, from me.
I'm seeing a lot of thumbs, so I feel confident. Okay,
Right.
Jeff.
So we call order the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission, and first action is the meeting minutes of November 24th, 2020.
Why don't we do?
Linda Kuhnhart will move to accept the minutes of November 24th.
Deb
Great.
Levens will second.
Thanks, Deb. Thanks, Linda. So I'll go around the room, so to speak. Auburn, Bill Herman,
Abstain.
Paula Mertzloff. You just have to unmute, Paula.
Abstained.
Thanks, Paula. Bill in Bedford.
Aye.
Charlie. You still with us, Charlie? I'll move on. Barbara Salvatore.
I abstain.
Thank you. Al Hall Candia. You guys are muted, Linda. You're still muted.
Sorry about that. Hello, yes.
Okay, Dick Snow,
Aye.
Chester Deb Munson,
Yes.
Bob Cody in Deerfield,
Abstain.
Jeff in Derry,
Yes.
John O'Connor.
Yes.
In Francistown, we have Alfred, I think.
Abstain.
Okay. All right, Alfred, you have to mute. For whatever reason, Alfred, when you are on, I start hearing myself in double, and once is enough. I know that already. Linda Kuhnhart, Francistown.
Favor.
Thanks, Linda. David in Goffstown.
Yes.
Thank you, David. We hear you loud and clear with our new microphone. I'm so happy. Londonderry, oh my goodness. Londonderry, Brian Battaglia.
Yes.
That's a new book I'm gonna write. Suzanne.
Approve.
Thanks, Suzanne. Deb Levens,
Yes.
Art Ruggs,
Yes, I did notice that the members excused was missing in the Southern Hampshire Planning Commission where it was included in the MPO minutes, so copy and paste.
okay, thanks. I'm sure Linda is listening in and we'll make adjustments. Martin Srugas,
Abstain.
thanks, Martin. And I did better on your last name that time. I'm congratulating myself. Manchester, Peter Capano,
Yes.
thanks, Peter. Let's see, New Boston, we still have Mark?
Yes, aye.
Yay, there you are, right? Tom Clow and where?
Yes.
Thanks, Tom. Wyndham, we had Peter Griffin.
Yes, Windhamia says abstains.
Okay, and Mike Whitten. Oh, Mike left because this is the commission. Anyone I missed? Hopefully not. Okay, I think we're ready to hear George. And while George is getting ready, just a little background. So in the last couple of years, we've had multiple communities working with us on our age-friendly program. And that's kind of with a variety of pilot programs, I don't know how to say it, melded into some interesting surveys for master plans. And what I found with Hooksett, Derry, Bedford, Ware, and Goffstown, all of those communities decided while they were updating their master plans, they would try to have an age-friendly component to their master plans. I asked George Sioris to give us a brief presentation on the Derry master plan, because not only does it have age-friendly components, it was really, I would say, a little bit more unusual than the typical update. And I thought it'd be worthwhile for everyone to hear. So hopefully, George, you're ready to go.
Hi, thank you, Sylvia. I am Linda. Is it possible to get a couple of the slides up on the screen that I can walk through? Okay.
I've just made you a co-host so you can do your own slides.
Okay, I'm in a different room, Sylvia, so that's why I'm a little showing out about the technical end. I'm not in my computer in my office because we don't have that ability. So Linda and I are gonna walk through, I think just a couple, and I'll make it brief because I know we're running close to 1 o'clock already. So if that's okay?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Sure.
Thank you. As Sylvia said, we updated our master plan in 2000. I know John O'Connor, our chairman from Derry, is here, as well as Jeff Moulton from Derry. The last time we did it was in 2010, and we hired a consultant that took a different approach to how we should look at the master plan versus it being done traditionally, where we would have staff or a consultant do a lot of the work and kind of give their ideas and their goals. So this time around, we looked at it from the perspective of 4 different things, and the key one will be the implementation, which I can elaborate on that in a couple of minutes. But what we looked at was the process of what the master plan should be. So we said that, what do we have? There were 4 questions that we asked. One would be, what do we currently have, which would be the existing inventory, assessments of facilities, what are the existing conditions, reviewing any previous studies. We also did what we called leadership interviews with various town departments and different boards. And I'll get to, this is the key one, because this is what made our plan a little bit more unique. So building up to the implementation, the second question was, what do we want? And that gets involved in the community in terms of what they would like to see for their next 10 to 20 year build out. So as Sylvia alluded to, we had what we call the community conversation. We had 3 public forums held at our various schools, our high school, and we did one here in the municipal center, and we did one at our middle school. And that was your traditional going out to the community, inviting the public forum, having a series of questions on poster boards, putting dots on the boards to say things, what you like or don't like about Derry, what would you like to see in the future. And that was the key one. But The difference on this third one was, in addition to social media, we reached out and we did 3 surveys, as Sylvia had alluded to. One was your traditional master plan survey. This was before COVID, so we still try to reach out to the community and say, try to attend the public forums. We still had people that are not, or don't want to do computer surveys online, so we still wanted them to be there in public. But we also wanted to encourage a lot of folks that do have the social skills on computers to say, how would you like to see Derry developed over the next 10 years? So our first survey was a generic master plan with some traditional questions of different chapters: land use, zoning, open space, recreation, transportation. A new one added this year was resilience and climate change. That seemed to be a popular topic. Economic development for Derry. As you know, an exit 4A in the region, if that exit gets built down the next few years, that will really have a regional impact on Derry and Londonderry, and potentially give some economic development opportunities. So that was a key one as well. And for Derry's case, our downtown redevelopment. And then the surveys, we worked with Southern Hampshire Planning Commission, and I want to compliment them on the great job. They did 2 surveys for us. Cam Perlman helped us. One was specific to age friendly, that we worked with Tufts University and Todd Fahey from the AARP New Hampshire. And we did a very specific survey for age friendly and asked questions as people get older, what do they want to see in their community, and how do you age out and live in your community and participate in your community. So that was really helpful. And then the last one, we went the other way and we targeted, thank you, Linda, that's the one. We targeted the young folks in the community. We tried to reach some of the 20-somethings, if you will. We got a good response, and we also had them, talk about, as a younger person, what do they see in the community? As Derry and other communities in the region, we're one of the oldest communities in the state. So we wanted to really get help from the young folks in town, and we were able to get that input. We had over 400 people on the initial survey, so we were very pleased with that. And I think over 200 on the young community. And prior to COVID, we reached out to a couple of the senior centers in town, the housing projects, as well as Vets Hall, where the senior activity programs are held. The third part we broke in was called opportunities and challenges were identified. And again, this was discussed with the town staff and the public. Again, we had a second and a third public forum. We narrowed down the questions. We went through the exercise again and putting the dots on the board. What are the opportunities and challenges of Derry moving forward? We compiled that with our consultant. And the fourth one was really the key one. And this is kind of the new one that we did that we had not seen in previous master plans. And that's called the implementation plan. Once we had our opportunities and challenges and we got the input, we then identified the priorities again based on what was the most popular responses, both in person, on the surveys, as well as those different colored dots that you see. The last part was the implementation part, and that was something that was unique to this process for us anyway, and the master plan, that we broke it out. And I don't know, Linda, if there's a table. There was one I sent this morning. There might be one more table. The implementation one that you had shown earlier. I'm talking loud and fast, so I apologize. But the key one is really the last part. You need.
No, do we lose the voice?
Yeah, Linda, that was the one. Remember the first one you showed on exit 4A? It was a table. Here we go. One more. This is kind of the process that I kind of very rapidly went through. I apologize if I spoke fast, but there was one.
Yeah, they're all separate, so I have to find the right one.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Try the exit 4 gateway.
Yeah, it's for the background, I picked out exit 4A just for the discussion today because obviously it involves Derry and Londonderry. It's in the 10-year highway plan. It's been funded. There was a delay this past year with the cost of the when it went out for the cost of the improvements, and it was $30 million over budget. And I know John O'Connor, our state rep, can attest to that. There is some discussions, and they're having some meetings with the New Hampshire DOT and the governor's office and the Senate to look at potentially finding some additional funding sources or to come up with, to fill that gap of the $80 million. So what we did is, prior to this, again, this was pre-COVID, Exit 4A will be called Derry's New Gateway. Again, it's a regional impact. So what we try to do is look at both the challenges and the opportunities based on the new Exit 4A, which is in the north end of town, where a good chunk of Derry's industrial commercial zones are located. There's opportunities there for redevelopment from some older industrial parks that were built back in the 1960s and 70s. But the key thing is on the objectives that we laid out and the implementation. And I think this was the process that the consultants said, in their opinion, seemed to work the best. That a lot of time master plans will be very generic. You have your goals, and sometimes nothing's done with master plans, or they look at the goals and they're not feasible, or there's no time frame to do that, or probably who should do that. So what we did is we broke out, and this came from our consultant, and they found this to be successful in their work, that this is how we laid it out. So you can see what the strategy would be. So 3.211, if you can see that at home, talked about rezoning the area of Exit 4A with mixed use development and looking at the existing zoning, what your potential actions are, looking again, defining what you'd like to see in the area. Some people talked about research, an entertainment district, how it would be funded. And you can see, like in this case, this would be the town would be doing that. And then who would take the lead? And this is really the key thing, is like in the past, you'd say, well, who's supposed to do this? So we try to work with the consultant and internal staff from all our various departments. And we prioritize, what was the number one thing that came out of the public comments and who should take the lead on these different things. So in the case of the rezoning, that would be the planning board would work on rezoning of that area. And then the partners would be planning department, and economic development director. We have an economic development advisory committee. And as you go down those, you can see like other things, encourage economic development. We talked about more regional impact, helping the New Hampshire DOT would be involved, Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission. And this is really the key one. And then as you go scroll further down, 3.2, develop walking and biking facilities. Again, the DOT would hope to maybe apply for some TAP alternative, a transportation alternative program to construct bike paths and bicycle facilities and sidewalks in that area at some point. And then again, we talked about who some of the lead partners would be. And it's very specific. So when you go to the master plan, was broken into 3 volumes. So volume 1 talked about what the summary is, what the recommendations of the plan are, and what the future goals will be. Volume 2, and it came out to about 100 pages per book. The second book was the existing conditions. We talked about earlier about department heads, what past reports had been done. And then the third volume was just the inventory. So you have copies of all the surveys, all the poster boards, all the comments, tallied up with the voting, and so that way people have the ability to go look at something that's both online, and we made 100 copies of hard copies that we distributed to everybody. So I think the uniqueness of this was to touch on a different approach. This was not the consultant or staff coming into the community and telling us what we think might be a good way to look at Derry's future. We really relied on the public. Fortunately, this happened before COVID, so we were able to get some decent turnouts at the public forums, as well as online survey work. And I think this is a guideline for the implementation that gives various departments, as staff comes and goes, and board members come and go, and volunteers come and go, that they have something very specific that they can work on, who will take the lead on it. And I think, and we call it like short-term and long-term goals. We call the short-term, especially the kind of the joke was low-hanging fruit, in the sense that there's some things that we can do in the next few months, literally to maybe a year or two. The short-term things is the planning board, as John O'Connor, as the chairman of the planning board, knows, we started looking at zoning changes up at Exit 4A. And then the long-term, we put in some grant money, hopefully to finish our bike trail to the Londonderry line, as Nate had alluded to earlier. And then in the long-term, there's needs for a new police station, a new fire station, or new upgrade of fire facilities. We have some recreation projects that long-term they'd like to do. We've talked about a brand new senior center or community center long-term. And we also worked with our high school, Pinkerton Academy. We also worked with the Derry School District, particularly on the Derry School District side. They have declining enrollment like other communities around the state, and they're looking, we worked with their consultant to look at what the long-term facilities program is for the school district and incorporated that in the plan. So it was kind of refreshing. It was different. And I talked fast and loud, and I thank Linda for helping me. I didn't want to overdo it. I know this was a lot to throw at you, but if you go online, the link's there. You can see how the uniqueness of this plan. I've done several of these in my career over 30 years, and I think this was a different approach. We actually liked this from the staff level. It wasn't, like I said, in the past when we had planning board members or subcommittees work on stuff, and the planning commission had helped us. They did a great job in the past. We've had consultants work with us, and sometimes the consultant would come in with their vision. We thought we would take a different approach this time and make it really a community document. And as John O'Connor can attest to, a lot of it was based on community input and not so much from the staff or departments or others to come in and say, this is what we think we should have. So I apologize if I threw a lot at you, but Linda, thank you. And I know it's getting later. I'll entertain any questions if anyone has any. I apologize. I don't know.
Bill, that's Bill DeShotgo in Bedford.
Okay, Bill, sorry, I don't know you, but thank you, Bill.
That's okay. Appreciate it. I want to compliment you on what I think is a really great output on your plan. I really like the entire layout and the approach you've taken. We're going through the same finalization of our master plan in Bedford, and I'd really like to be able to adopt some of the things you did, but it's probably a little too late. I do have a question. Can you give us a rough idea what the cost of your expenditures were with your outside consultants?
Yeah, thank you for the comments, Bill. Yeah, we budgeted $100,000. We put an RFP out. You know, we kind of looked at a range when we initially said, how much do you think this is going to cost? So we spoke to our town manager, town administrator. And again, we had comments like, well, maybe you should put 75,000. We checked with some of our surrounding communities. We said, well, some went up to 150,000. So we made a decision to do $100,000, which was within everything that the consultant promised to us. They did. We were under budget literally by about $1,000. So that stayed on track. It took us 18 months approximately to start it and to finish the document. And then we put an additional $5,000 in my last planning budget department last year to get color printed. So we made 100 copies of these volumes.
Yep.
We went to Alpha Graphics in Manchester, who the town has an account with, and they provided 100 copies. And believe it or not, people still want to see the hard copies. We distribute them to everybody in the libraries, departments, different committees. So I guess the answer to your question, Bill, would be 105,000 total.
That's super. What a great job you did.
Thank
Was that a 10-year redo or a 5-year redo?
This one was a 10. The last one we did was 2010, so this was a 10-year one.
Thank you.
And just for the record, the work SNHPC did, that was paid through Tufts Health Plan Foundation grant.
Yeah, thank you, Sylvia.
That was the age survey, right?
What was that, Bill?
Was that the age survey part, Sylvia?
Yeah, the age-friendly survey and also the young adult survey. I think Cam, who's still on, Cam, I don't know if you want to say a couple of words, but I think you went to some interesting places for that.
Yeah, we worked with, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we worked with George and other staff in Derry and kind of brainstormed some different places we thought we could reach some younger audiences. We went to some cafes and things like that. And yeah, just tried to get the word out and some input from younger people who, as we all know, typically don't get involved in, a master plan update. But I think it went pretty well.
Yeah.
That was great, George. Thanks.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, this was a fun one. Like I said, I've done my long career here. I've done, maybe this is the fifth one now, and I have to say, this is probably one I enjoyed the most. This was a good one. So, and again, Sylvia's staff was excellent too, so.
Yeah, Jerry did. I really, if you have time, take a minute, go to the link. It was embedded in this information we sent out, and it really is very interesting. All right. That ends. I know everyone stayed an extra 15 minutes, so thank you. Happy holidays. Stay safe. I think we just need a motion to, adjourn and all that, right, Jeff?
Right.
Also move it, John O'Connor.
Thanks,
Second.
John.
Little Shatco.
Bill, did you just second that?
Yes, I did.
Okay, thumbs up, everyone.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Happy
Holidays.
Holidays, Merry
Happy New
Christmas.
Year.
Nice
Stay
job,
well.
George.
Bye. Thank you, John. Thanks,
Bye
Nate.
now. And I know, Dick, you wanted to stay on, so I'm on. Bye, everyone.
Is there anyone else who should be on?
Why don't you guys hang out? Let's hear what Dick had to say.
Okay.
Sylvia, I'll be sending you some stuff on closed caption and accessibility, and we can talk about it in January, I guess.
When you say about closed captioning, are you talking about for meetings or?
Municipal Budget Committee last night, we were considering, I'm a member, we were considering the operating budget and warrant articles. One of the warrant articles is this: to see if the Candia School District vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $30,000 for the purpose of purchasing audio, video equipment for the live streaming / recording of school board meetings and school events. I told them that I couldn't support it because the town of Candia spent $2,500, $3,000 to do what it is they wanted to do. And they said, well, Hooksett got sued by somebody from Indiana, and they had to pay $1.25 for every minute of a recording for closed captions. I did some research on it. I said I can get streaming captions for $20 a month. Somebody comes in and they want to access information that's in a Zoom meeting, they can pay $1.25 for every minute that they'd like to have a copy of. Otherwise, I can't see spending the money. So we aren't doing closed caption. The town is not doing closed caption. I see for accessibility. I see the